Hi Virgo, welcome to your December 2017 forecast. This is Lee at Fresh Astrology, and we are looking at two of the most impactful transits during this month, and that would be the movement of Saturn from Sagittarius into Capricorn. And from your fourth house, this is an area of your chart, which I will describe in a minute, and moving from the fourth house into the fifth house, another separate area with separate symbolic meanings, and we'll review what those are. Also, in the same area of the chart where Saturn and Mercury are doing their thing, because they're concentrated in one area of your chart, we also have the movement of Venus and the Sun. So in this forecast here, we'll talk about Mercury retrograde and Saturn on my website, www.freshastrology.com. I will have a download that deals exclusively with Venus and what that means. So first of all, we have this larger movement of Saturn. And Saturn, for the last 2.5 years, so you kind of think of that time frame, you've had Saturn in your fourth house of home. All things to do with home and family, the actual four walls around you, where you live, where you don't live. How does it feel where you live? Is it cramped? Has there been a restriction? Has it been a burden? Have you moved? Has it sometimes felt like you don't have a home? Is there a person living with you who's hard to take care of? Is there an elderly parent in the mix? They don't have to live with you, but is there an elderly parent somewhere who requires more attention somehow, who takes your attention? So those are the themes that you've been dealing with, and now you're prepped for a change. Usually having Saturn in the fourth house is not that it's totally bad, but it's not the most fun place to have Saturn. Unless you're learning how to build houses. Or maybe learning how to be, to do what people who work for Ancestry.com, you learn how to do genealogy reports. And maybe building a home business. So sometimes it's fun if you're using some of this transit to build from the ground up, as it were, a metaphorical house of your business. So you're building kind of a home for your business. This can be an area where maybe that's more beneficial to you. But it would have been there would have been time restrictions, some restrictions, there would have been some challenges. You would have had to be learning a lot, which aren't bad things, but I'm just acknowledging that maybe it wasn't all easy. And also, furthermore, in addition to that, challenge of dealing with family stuff, dealing with maybe a new business endeavor, or working from home, or something to do with work and school, maybe homeschooling for some of you. In addition to that, it's the psychological work a person has to do with Saturn in this fourth house area. It depends. Like if you've already been working on yourself a great deal, this work is not quite as challenging feeling. So it depends on where you've been in your life previous to this transit. So what we're doing right now is just looking back over and kind of honoring where you've been. It's good to, especially with this Mercury retrograde happening right now during this month, to really review and reaffirm, research, renew some kind of perspective or lesson. Honor it. See how far you've come. See what you've accomplished. Notice the odds that have been challenging to you, and how you've beat the odds in some cases. Notice where you've been victorious, because in this transit sometimes it's hard to see that when we've had Saturn down here in this part of our chart. It's hard to see how much we've overcome. Any restrictions around family and home and where you live. Sometimes you're so busy dealing with that, and sometimes the heaviness psychologically of Saturn here, that it's not as easy to validate that we've actually accomplished a great deal, maybe internally. Maybe it's not very external. Maybe it's harder for people to see, harder for you to see, but internally, maybe there's been a lot of foundation building, kind of tearing down old structures and beliefs and building something new because you've opened yourself up to learning from the past and trying to do things in a new way. So just take time in this month with Mercury retrograde to review all that you've learned around family, home, building a new business, letting go of psychological junk from the past, learning how to do something in a new way that has to do with being in a family, having a home. How have you learned to do something in a really new way? And you've had to kind of stretch and become more mature to do whatever this is. Honor that. Give yourself credit because now, Saturn's going to be on the move and you're prepping for this during the first 3 weeks of the month. And then Saturn's going to move into Capricorn where it will be for the next 2.5-ish years. And it will be joining an area of the chart where Pluto has been hanging out for a long time. And Saturn and Pluto together are kind of heavyweights. And you're prepping for this now, and the time will come in December when, Saturn will officially enter this area. And it's the 5th house area. It's an interesting place to have this big energy. But because you're Virgo in an earth sign, and because Capricorn is an earth sign, this will be oddly good. It will have some beneficial impact on you and be easier for you to deal with than maybe if another sign happened to have this kind of lineup of, Pluto and, well, they will actually, but they won't have it in the 5th house. So for you, it's as though you, how do I want to say it? It's still going to feel challenging in some ways. It's still going to be a time of growth and learning. But somehow, because it's in a fellow earth sign, where you're very comfortable, you're so comfortable with Capricorn energy. You're so comfortable with the practical nature, the planning, the long-term view, taking into account, so many different things, and condensing it into an organized path forward. You're really good with this stuff. So somehow in these 5th house areas, a lot of important work is happening. So one area, if you have children or want to have children, is the area of, rearing children or anything really to do. Like say you write books for children or illustrate books for children. Maybe you write books about kids' psychology. Maybe you teach children. Maybe you're a sports coach for children. There's some important work here for you. You're learning how to do something in a new way. It's requiring you to grow as a person, whatever it is you're doing. Like say you are writing a children's book or series. Maybe you've never done it before, or maybe you've never done it exactly this way. Something about it will help you stretch and grow, and by the end of this transit, you'll also be looking back on it in 2.5 years and saying, wow, look at how much I've learned. Look at how much I had to grow to do this. So children themes. If you are a parent, you may have a child who requires a little more attention. There may be themes around school, themes around structure, boundaries that you'll be paying attention to. And if it's another 5th house theme would be romance. So if it's romance and you've got Saturn and Pluto, I laugh with you. You've been experiencing the Pluto energy since 2009, and you know whatever it's done for you there, or to you, you may feel. But whatever has been going on there, it's been a total rehaul of some sort. So maybe you started a relationship in 2009 and it's blown your mind. You've had to totally reorganize who you are as a person to have this ongoing relationship. Maybe you haven't had a relationship since 2009, and maybe you've just had to completely overhaul your whole approach to romance or something. but it's been a deep change, deep growth kind of process for you. Maybe you've dated here and there, but it's had this Pluto nature about it, so that you, maybe some of the people you've dated have been sort of representations of Pluto, very deep, very intense, or maybe they've pulled that out of you, made you more that way. Maybe they've just been deeply transformative, even if they don't really represent Pluto so much. They've just worked to, over time, completely transform the way you approach relationships. You've been doing a lot of deep change here with regard to romance. So with Saturn coming in, it's harder. And if you've been in a long-term relationship, it's still that deep, deep growth, that time of growth where it's just challenged you to the very core to stay in a relationship. To stay in a relationship requires such deep personal transformation if you stayed in a relationship. Many Virgos have divorced over this time period who were in long-term relationships. With Saturn now coming in, so let's take the different scenarios. And we will deal in a separate download on my website. We'll deal with that Venus, which is sometimes can do with love. We'll deal with that in a separate download. You can go to www.freshastrology.com to get that, and also to see your 2018 forecast. But back to the 5th house and Saturn. So later in December, when Saturn comes in here, if it has to do with romance, it can symbolize a person coming in. It's hard if you've had like a really tough going kind of desert-like, I think I've compared it to a desert before, desert-like experience with love, or or love is just few and far between. It's hard to find. It feels more like love is like little oases here and there. If that's been your experience, it's hard for Saturn to come in and make it even worse. I suppose there's that chance, but that would mean you have more to learn. So try to learn quickly, because at any given time through this 2.5-year period, it can symbolize a person, because it's going to be interacting with other things in your personal chart and other transits. So at any time, it can just materialize as a person. So you want to be learning quickly, learn fast. And if it does materialize as a person and it goes nowhere, learn quickly, learn the lesson from it. So, but I would say if it's really been dormant here, it's more likely to bring into being something more permanent. But you've got to be in that student mind that we talk about with Saturn. You've got to be willing to learn and grow. So this is sometimes about the other person, especially in terms of who you go for, who you tend to pick. Do you pick people who are cold and distant? Do you pick people who are emotionally unavailable? Do you pick people who are control freaks and need to control you or need to discipline you? Not in a kinky, 50 Shades of Grey way, but who feel like they have to tell you, what you did wrong or how you could do it better? Do you attract people who are like a parent, like you're attracting in your mother or your father, who need to talk down to you? Who are you attracting in and why? Is that your expectation in love? So sometimes it's that kind. If it's about the other person, it's who we allow into our lives. It's mostly about us. What are we doing to grow? What lessons are we willing to learn here? So that's my advice, and if it's coming in the form of working on love. Otherwise, it's very beneficial, and I don't need to coach you much around this. It's very beneficial around creative projects and building a business, building up any kind of hobby that's fun into a business. This is a great time professionally for a Virgo to be building a hobby, a creative project, or a kind of living that's like a way of earning a living that's fun. This is the time to do it. Use this next 2.5 years to really work on that. And it's going to be a very interesting December. Notice what's happening around you. Notice how you're feeling. Notice the shifts that are taking place. It's all good data. All right, take care.